Normally, I like to nerd out about one running shoe at a time, but every once in a while, it's helpful to zoom out and take a look at a running brand as a whole. This is Brooks Running, Spring Summer 2026. Yo, what's going on? My name is Kofuzi and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews running shoes here on YouTube. And today I want to talk to you guys about the Brooks lineup as of spring, summer 2026. But before I give my thoughts on these shoes, I do want to go over some disclosures. I think all of these shoes were provided to me for the purpose of review, so I didn't have to pay for these shoes. However, nobody's paid me to make this video or to include their brand in this video, and no one's gonna get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Brooks running lineup. And let's start where I always like to start when it comes to looking at a brand, and that's with the Daily Trainer. And from Brooks, this is going to be the Ghost. They're on number 17. The shoe has been around for a long time, and over that time, it's provided a pretty consistent experience as the Daily Trainer, as the shoe that you'd reach for most of your runs in the Brooks lineup and most of your days. I find it to be a little bit on the firm side for me in terms of my specific preferences, but it's got a great amount of cushion, lots of padding throughout the upper so that it's nice and comfy, and everything's built for the kind of durability you would want for a Daily Trainer. Now, if you want something that's a little bit more comfy than this, has a little bit more cushion, a little bit more padding, then you're looking at the Max Cushion shoe in the Brooks lineup, and that would be the Glycerin. This is Glycerin 23, and this is a shoe that's taller than the Ghost, has more padding than the Ghost does, and all around it's a little bit more premium of a shoe than the Ghost is as well. So you're getting kind of more comfort, more cushion, and also kind of more niceness to go along with it. Like the Ghost, I feel like the Glycerin is a little bit more firm than I'd like. For people that have liked Brooks shoes, that's a kind of a signature feeling across their lineup, and something that does really well with Brooks faithful. Now, when it comes to a race day, the shoe from Brooks that you're looking at would be the Hyperion Elite. This is Hyperion Elite version 5. This is a shoe that uses PIBA midsole foam, so a racing caliber foam, and a carbon fiber plate. It's even got these bubble cutouts on the side of the shoe that's going to help with some bounciness if you're a midfoot striker, and that is the racing shoe in the lineup. Now, there's a little bit of a space here for what I would call the tempo shoe or the workout shoe. And for a long time from Brooks, it used to be the Hyperion, and I guess technically it still is, and this is the Hyperion 3. But this shoe has undergone a really big change from what it used to be back when it was originally called the Hyperion Tempo. This shoe, I think, is more of a Daily Trainer kind of shoe. It is lighter than the Ghost, and it provides an experience that is pretty different than what the Ghost provides. It's using a different kind of foam that in this shoe is a little bit softer, but also is a little bit peppier as well. So I much prefer this as the daily training shoe, but some people might call it a speedy Daily Trainer or a lightweight Daily Trainer. It can be used for workouts, but it's not quite as much of a workout shoe as the Hyperion used to be. Now, when it comes to stability shoes, I can't run in stability shoes. They always give me problems, so I don't review them. But if you're looking for stability options, a stability version of the Ghost would be the Adrenaline GTS. The GTS designation is what lets you know that it is a stability shoe in the Brooks lineup. And from the Glycerin, there is a Glycerin GTS that you can reach for if you need stability shoes. Now, from here, there are some offshoots in the Brooks lineup. One of the things that Brooks has been doing is they've made max versions of all of their main shoes. The racing shoe is kind of the racing shoe by itself. There aren't any alternate versions of the racing shoe currently in the lineup, but there are alternate versions of these three main franchises. And so for the Ghost as a Daily Trainer, if you like the experience there, but just want kind of more of it, more comfort, more stack height, there's the Ghost Max. And so now we have this situation in the lineup where we have the Ghost Max, which is kind of a max cushion version of the Ghost. And then we also have the Glycerin, which I also describe as kind of a max cushion version of the Ghost. But one thing to note is that these two shoes have different foams. And the other thing here is that the geometry of the Ghost Max is also quite different than the geometry of the Glycerin 23. And one of the things you'll note is if you look underneath, there's a very wide footprint to the Ghost Max, much wider than pretty much any other shoe shoe in the Brooks lineup. So even though it's not a stability shoe, that width provides a lot of stability as your foot lands. And so it's a stabilized version of the Ghost without having kind of traditional stability features like the Adrenaline might have. I find this shoe to be also more firm than I'd want it to be, and I find it to be a little bit clunky because of that width. But if the Glycerin isn't working for you and you do want something taller, the Ghost Max could be a fun option to look at. But not to be outdone, the Glycerin also has a Max version, and this is the Glycerin Max 2. So if you like what's going on in the Glycerin and want more of that sensation, then you're gonna wanna look at the Glycerin Max 2. And so the Hyperion also has a Max version, and this is the Hyperion Max 3. What we have here is a layer of PEBA, which is what we saw in the Hyperion Elite, the racing shoe. And we do have some of the same foam that's in the Hyperion 3, but there's also a plastic plate that you could see through here that kind of stabilizes everything. And so while the Hyperion 3 is kind of that speedy daily trainer, maybe it's a tempo shoe, I find that the Hyperion Max 3, I consider this as more of a long run shoe. It's a bit on the heavy side for that, but for those days where I'm gonna be on feet for a long period of time, and maybe I do need to pick up the pace a little bit, maybe there's a little bit of a workout in that long run, I feel like that's a great way to use a Hyperion Max 3. Now, we have the regular versions, we have the Max versions, and then there are also another tier entirely, which this way went more chill, more relaxed, more cushioned. This way gets to be a little bit faster. And it's not a fully fledged lineup, but there's a couple of shoes that I think exist that kind of fit in the front here as faster versions of the main shoes. And so we had the Glycerin, we have the Max version of it. We also have a brand new shoe called the Glycerin Flex. Now this one's interesting because it has all these flex grooves in it to make the shoe a lot more flexible. But this shoe ends up being a lot lighter than the regular Glycerin, and for me, it ends up being a lot peppier than the Glycerin. So if you feel like the Glycerin is a little bit too chill and relaxed, the Glycerin Flex might be a really fun, slightly speedier option that still has a lot of Glycerin feel. And then on this side of the Hyperion side, there isn't like a Hyperion Flex, for example, but there is another shoe in the lineup that frequently gets overlooked because it's cheaper. It's looked at as a budget model. But this is the Launch version 11. And remember how I said that the Hyperion 3 underwent a really big change from version 2 to version 3. I feel like the Launch 11 ends up being a lot like a Hyperion 2.5 or maybe a Hyperion 3A instead of the Hyperion 3. And so if you like that pure tempo shoe feel of the older Hyperion but want it in a slightly updated package, the Launch 11 is it. And so I feel like it kind of fits in this Hyperion family of shoes. There's nothing here yet, as far as I can tell, in the Ghost silo in terms of a lighter, more flexible version of the Ghost, but who knows what Brooks has cooking in the pipeline. And I think these, along with the Hyperion Elite version 5, are the main shoes in the Brooks lineup in spring and summer of 2026. Now that we've talked about all of these shoes separately, let's talk about how these shoes can fit together into some sample rotations. And I'm not saying that everyone has to have a rotation or a closet full of shoes, and I'm not saying you have to have a rotation using only one brand, but I think if I put together some sample rotations using these shoes, it might help make each one of the shoes make more sense in relation to some of the others. And so whenever I do this, I like to start with a 4-shoe rotation because I think that's a lot for most people to put together. And as I'm looking at this table, I think there's some shoes that I can easily kind of get rid of because they're not my favorites. And so I think the entire Ghost column is gone. And I think the regular Glycerin is going to be gone as well. I am going to need a race shoe. So right now I have 5 shoes on the table. And I think that the racing shoe, the Hyperion, which I would use as a daily trainer, is something I want to have in the lineup. I really do like the Glycerin Flex. So that's another shoe that I want to have in the lineup. And then, so the 4th shoe, it's going to be tough between the Glycerin Max 2 and the Hyperion Max 3. The Glycerin Max 2 is a really fun, like just super chill, very comfortable max cushion shoe that I could take for long runs. The Hyperion Max 3 isn't as comfy, but if I have a long run that has some pace changes in it, I'm definitely going to want to have the PEBA layer that's in this shoe in order to pick up the pace. And I think the shoe that I'd probably get rid of is the Glycerin Max 2, just because super cushy shoes aren't something that I really reach for very regularly. It's only every once in a while that I need it, so I think I could probably live without it. And so this is how I would set up the lineup. The Hyperion Max 3 would be, I guess, my max cushion shoe, but mainly my long run shoe. The daily training would get split between the Glycerin Flex and the Hyperion 3. If I wanted to go a little lighter, faster, I'd go with the Hyperion 3. If I felt like I just wanted something that was slightly more chill, then I would go with the Glycerin Flex. And then for all of my workouts and then for my racing, that's how I would use the Hyperion Elite 5. Now, if I were to reduce this even further, I think where I'd go is I'd probably eliminate some of the duplicativeness I have in this daily training space. And this would be tough, but I'd probably get rid of the Glycerin Flex because as far as kind of taller shoes go, I still have the Hyperion Max 3 in here. And then I have the Hyperion 3 for my daily training, for some comfier runs as well, and some lighter workouts. And then again, all the big workouts, and for racing, I'd be using the Hyperion Elite 5. And then if it were to come down to a 2-shoe rotation, I think the shoe that I would lose would be the Hyperion Max 3 because it's kind of specialized. I feel like it's just really too heavy for me to rely on as heavily as I would need to rely on if I had just a 2-shoe rotation. So then I would use the Hyperion 3 for most of my running, most of my days. I would use it as my daily trainer, a lightweight daily trainer, and then all workouts and then racing would happen in the Hyperion Elite 5. We do have the Hyperion Elite 6 is coming soon. Some of the pros have been racing in prototypes of it already, so hopefully we'll be seeing that soon. But I think as of right now, filming this in late March, I think that all the shoes that I talked about today are the latest versions that are currently available for sale. So if you have any questions about any of the shoes that I talked about today, feel free to put them in the comments down below, or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Mondays and Thursdays over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to see you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?